Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Married Ino Till Death, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. She's looking for something new to heal her broken heart. Naruto, she softly whispered in his ears, let's go. She took his arm and led the way out of the party and into the night's air. Funny, isn't it? How life can flip things around like it was cooking pancakes. Here they are, two blondes sitting out on a bench looking at the flower beds around them. Hey Ino, Naruto breathed into Ino's en, want to do something? He asked with a smirk as he closed his eyes to savor her scent once again. He felt so sick, yet fine at the exact same time. Naruto, she said to the male beside her with his head nuzzled against her bare en, you're drunk. I'm not drunk, he exclaimed angrily as he looked at her blue eyes. Ino just looked at him with sadness, or was it pity? Naruto, she said softly pushing his head back onto her shoulder, do you feel like you're alone? She asked as she ran her fingers softly through his hair. He was shocked and surprised, yet at the same time relieved and free, in a way. He gave off a sigh and knew that his mask had slipped and he was exposed to no other than Yamanaka Ino, the all-wanted female. He snuggled closer to her and grabbed her hand with both of his. He moved his thumbs in circular motion for a while. His head was facing what he was doing, but his mind wasn't there at all. He was thinking to himself how he'd been figured out. Why was it Ino who could see through it? Maybe it was because he drank a little too much. You okay? Her gentle voice called out, breaking his trail of thoughts. He slowly moved his head back to look at her once more. She was facing the scenery in front of them as he faced the side of her angelic face. She's so beautiful, he thought before he tightened his grip on her hand. He wanted to say that he likes her, but it was taboo and she knew it too. He moved himself to sit closer to her and wanted this to never end, but what if people saw? He sure didn't care what anyone says, but maybe she does. He felt like he should let go of her hand and walk away altogether, yet another part of him told him to stay and confess. Geez, which one would he take? He let go of her hand and slowly sat up straight before looking in front of him with nothing in his eyes. She turned to look at him for a moment, noticing his features was of the stoic attitude most guys were wearing recently, like it was a new trend. She watched him a little longer before her small fragile fingers brushed over his hand, before grabbing it gently. He turned with a shocked expression on his face. They thought that they were lost, but they were on their way. Two unlikely blondes from two totally different worlds coming together looking for someone in all the wrong places. She smiled at him and gently caressed his face softly as he smiled back. His hazy eyes cleared to see beautiful blue pools and flawless beauty. Naruto had to blink a couple of times to make sure the one who was holding his hand was no other than Ino. He parted his lips and was about to say something when she silenced him with a finger to his lips. Naruto, she began softly, those who are alone need someone who will understand. She lifts her finger away from his lips. Do you feel alone? She asks once more, giving him a small smile. He hesitated at first to say anything but then took a deep breath before nodding slightly. A soft breeze flew by caressing their hairs. You know, she said as she looked out into the scenery once again, do you remember the first time we met? Naruto nodded with a frown gracing his face. Past. Ouch. A girl screamed as her body slammed to the ground. Oh, sorry. A blonde boy screamed as he offered a hand to the girl. Said girl glared at him and stood up herself before noticing her books were all over on the floor. Barker, look what you did, she screeched angrily as she stared deathly at Naruto. A sweet drop fell down the side of his cheek. Sorry, he softly said as he bent down to pick her books, but was swatted by her dark brown hand. Don't you dare touch my books, she said through clenched teeth. Naruto stared at her and wanted to retort back angrily until someone interrupted them. Hey Winry, you okay? A girl with long blonde hair tied in a ponytail with bright blue eyes. No, she exclaimed angrily as she pointed at Naruto still bent. This SC knocked me down. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl looked at Naruto, then at her friend before a slight worried look crossed her features. Winry, the bell will ring soon, she reminded her flustered friend as she hastily grabbed her books and stood up. Ino, this boy from the lowest of the low dare touch my stuff. She yelled once more, gaining those around him attention. Naruto stood up abruptly, angrily, as he narrowed his eyes at the Winry girl. I didn't mean to bump into you, he retorted back angrily. Winry was about to yell back when Ino touched her shoulder. Kai is at the lockers waiting for you, she softly said, gaining a huge smile from her friend before she ran off with a squeal. Naruto stared at her back with narrowed eyes before Ino bent down, causing his eyes to look down at her. She grabbed her friend's cell phone and stood up to look at the boy. What is your name? She asks, interested in the blonde boy. He looked at her for a moment as if startled at thought that this pretty girl was talking to him. Me? He asked, pointing to himself, confused. Yes, you silly, she said with a smile at someone so funny. He chuckled to himself as he rubbed the back of his N goofily. Uzumaki Naruto, he said happily and asked hers in return. Yamanaka Ino, she said with a smile, then nodded to say she was leaving. He watched her go and couldn't help but have a smile on his face until realization hit him. Wait, I was talking to Ino. Yamanaka Ino, he screamed in his mind as redness crossed his face with embarrassment. End passed. That was something that was totally embarrassing for him, and she could see the unhidden blush rising to his cheeks. She giggled a little as she watched him look at her, then away with embarrassment. Such a funny person, someone she could get used to. She scooted closer to him and he immediately looked toward her direction as if he was worried. Naruto, she said once again, looking at him straight in the eyes, you're cute when you blush, and with that said a deeper shade of red graced his face as he looked away, stumbling over words to say. Yep, this felt right. The two of them sitting there laughing happily as they joked around in the middle of the night. You're different than I thought you were, she admitted to him as she looked at him, taking in his features. Blonde spiky hair with bright blue eyes and tanned skin, he was really something to look at. Oh yeah, to tell you the truth, I thought you were different too, he confessed, looking at her with a cheeky grin. She smiled and asked why that was. Well, Sakura, he began but was interrupted by Ino. Sakura, the pink-haired girl. She asked and he nodded his head. She said softly and smiled for him to continue. Damn her smile, he thought, because he, himself, couldn't help smiling along with her. So she told me you are the prettiest and most popular girl, he said as he looked at her to see a blank face, but you can be mean and rude too. She laughed a little, causing him to become surprised. She looked at him and nodded her head with a grin upon her face. Yeah, I can be like that sometimes, she said with a sigh and a small smirk. He just stared at her and squeezed her hand to have her smile genuinely at him. But you're you though, he said with a smile, and she blushed a slight pink before saying, thank you. They sat looking out into the distance with one another at each other's side. She laid her head gently onto his shoulder to feel it tense, but relaxed within a couple of seconds. This is right, she thought. It feels nice, he thought. Being with you, they both thought as a short breeze flew by, once again playing with the blonde locks which gently grazed their skin. So this was what they were looking for, it seems. They found each other who understood one another's pain of loneliness and found more than understanding, maybe they found love also. They thought as the sun began to let its rays peek out into the sky and people's voices were heard in the distance. The next couple of days were okay to say the least. It was Monday, 2 days after the event. Ever since the party, they became friends, and that made him warm inside. He couldn't help but let a smile grace his face as he continued his route to school. He didn't know why, but he wants to see those big sky blue eyes, those long golden locks, to touch her soft delicate skin, to wait. He shook his head slightly to clear his mind. He shouldn't be thinking of something like that. They just became friends, and here he is thinking of her in such ways that he felt disgusted with himself. The smile slowly faded away from his lips, cursing himself all the while. Yo Naruto, a voice called out to him. The blonde-haired man turned to see Kiba running toward him with a confused and puzzled look. Yo Ki, but before Naruto was able to finish his greeting, the brown-haired male interrupted him. Did you forget to tell me something 2 nights ago? Kiba asked, eyeing his friend. What do you mean? Naruto asked, confused himself. You sure you don't know? Kiba asked unbelievingly as his eyes narrowed. Yeah, why? And stop looking at me like that. Naruto pointed at his friend angrily for being accused of something he didn't do. Yamanaka Ino. Or did. Naruto just chuckled nervously while rubbing the side of his head. Kiba stared at him and gave off an aggravated sigh. You were going to hide it from me? He asked sadly, almost pouting. Nah man, I was going to tell you but it slipped my mind, Naruto said quickly, not wanting his best bud to be angry at him for something like that, but then a thought occurred. Wait, how'd you know? Kiba stared at his friend for a moment, wondering what the hell happened that night. Unfortunately he isn't able to recall much but making out with a girl, he hopes that is. His face scrunched up a little at thinking he was kissing a man. A small vial almost came out but he gulped it back down. Yo, Naruto said, breaking him from his thoughts as his friend's hand touched his shoulder. I'm good, he said, giving his friend an awkward smile before it fell into a frown upon hearing a voice. Naruto. The voice called out, making the two men turn to the owner. Sakura. Naruto screamed back, smiling as she stopped before him. Her face was that of disbelief, sadness, and anger. Naruto, I just have one question for you, she stated, watching the blonde nod slowly as his smile faded. Last night, she said, recalling what had occurred. What did you do after I left? She watched as Naruto's face became confused and then thoughtful. Why? He decided to ask, wondering what had gotten his two friends so weird. It's because, the pink head was about to say until a voice boomed over, causing all three to stare. Yo, spiky head. A rough voice called out with an accusing finger pointed at Naruto. As he got closer with a girl and another man behind him, Naruto almost couldn't believe what the hell was going on. Listen, he said lower but with venom laced into his voice, you are a loser, lowest of the low, so don't you dare go near Ino again or things won't be pretty, for you. He finished with his face mere millimeters away. Naruto just stared at him before anger beckoned out of his mouth. I don't have to do anything you say, Naruto said through clenched teeth with fisted hands, only she can tell me to stay away from her. You think she wants you to talk to her again? The man backed away a couple feet, laughing out loud, causing the other two behind him to laugh along. Don't be stupid. She isn't in your league and why would someone like her would talk to you? The guy smirked, seeing Naruto's baffled expression. Don't talk about my bud like that. Kiba screamed with his fist clenched so tight that it was turning white. And what are you going to do about it? Not invite me to your party? The guy said, laughing as the girl from behind him walked forward. You should keep your hands to yourself, Kiba-kun. Kiba just stared at her, then remembered that this was that girl. Purple hair, dark skin, he was relieved it wasn't a man. But holy crap. Do you remember me, Kiba-kun? The purple-haired woman asked sweetly with her lips twisted into a smirk. Kiba growled, wanting to slap himself but cursed himself instead. Kai. A voice called out as it neared the small crowd, breaking the eerily silence. The man who practically told Naruto off turned around as the rest of the eyes turned to see who it was. Ino, Naruto thought to himself as a small smile was placed on his lips. Ino, the man called Kai said with a soft velvety voice that was so different from the rough one. Ino smiled at him with someone walking beside her. Sai, I told you he was probably getting into troubles again, she said with a soft giggle as the raven-haired man smiled back at her pleasantly. Yes Ino, you are correct, he said before they stopped in front of them. Now Kai, I would like the drawing back. Sai extended his hand, waiting for Kai to give him what he wanted. Kai began to say, scratching the side of his cheek before backing away slowly, then heading off into a run before saying, I gotta go do something. Wait Kai. The girl called out, running after the man. Geez, those two, the man said softly before turning to greet the two. Good morning Ino, Sai. Morning, the two said in return, and then her eyes landed on Kiba, Sakura, and Naruto. All three looked baffled, confused, and relieved all at once. Hello Ino, Sai, Sakura said, bowing slightly, feeling flushed all of a sudden. Sakura, Ino said, a little surprised seeing her bow to them. The pink-haired girl stood up straight as if waiting for a chore. Ino just stood there for a moment watching the green-eyed girl, and she could see the uneasiness coming for the girl. Your hair, she began to say, getting a small glare from said girl. Is it real? Everyone just stood confused and surprised. It wasn't because the blonde asked a stupid question or if it was that she was asking about Sakura's hair, but it was the fact that the higher of high is talking to her. Even though Sakura has been accepted into the clique, she still wasn't the top like the blonde was. With Ino actually talking to her and let alone knows her name made Sakura extremely happy, almost giddy. Why, yeah, Sakura managed to say, nodding a little, causing the blonde to giggle and receiving a small smile from Sai. Wow, was all that the blonde said as Sai continued for her. That's pretty neat, Sai decided to say as the other man looked on with a frown on his face. I'm sorry, but I believe we should head to class, the man stated, looking straight at Ino, almost telling her something telepathically. Time already. Ino pouted cutely, receiving a blush from the man as well as Naruto, who just stared at her the entire time. Okay. Ino sighed, defeated as she turned to begin walking away, but stopped shortly. Aren't you three coming? She asked, looking over her shoulder to look at them. They gave each other a look before walking slowly behind the three. Sakura. A voice rang out and she stopped to head over there, all the while looking back, hoping it wasn't offensive to anyone. Ino slowed her step to match the two men behind her. Kiba, the party was fun, she said softly, giving him a smile, receiving a large grin and, thanks. From him. She turned to the other side to meet blue eyes staring at her and she almost blushed, but was placed with a smile. Naruto, she said, gaining his full attention, not like he wasn't giving it all already, I had fun. She was smiling at him and he wanted to just grab her and hold on to her, but another part of him scolded him for thinking that way. He smiled back at her, staring into her pale blue eyes. Yeah, me too, he said softly, smiling all the while. He couldn't pull his eyes away from her, from the mesmerizing skies in her eyes, from his reflection within those pools, but before he was able to further his thinking, he bumped into the man in front of him, hard. What the hell? He screamed as he turned around, anger within his voice. Naruto stared at him, then Ino, then back at him to receive a scowl. Sorry man, Naruto said, a bit nervously and embarrassed for doing something so stupid in front of the girl he has feelings for. Sorry. The man screamed once again, causing Naruto to look more lost and confused. Ino was watching how his face became pink from embarrassment and now a beet red as he felt eyes staring at him from the commotion. She couldn't suppress the laughter any longer, but suppressed it enough to a giggle. Unfortunately, it caused Naruto to look down, more embarrassed than before. Whatever. The guy screamed out, walking toward his classroom. Sai, on the other hand, stared confused as to why Ino laughed but decided not to push it. Someone called out his name and he bid farewell, but not before looking back at Ino once more, noticing something different. What could it be? He asked himself as walked to the person who called out his name. Yo, you okay Naruto? Kiba asked, a little worried as to how red his friend's face was becoming. You sick or something? The flu? He asked, trying to figure something out, staring at his friend. Naruto, Ino whispered as she bent close to his ears, you're cute when you blush. And with that said, she giggled once more before saying goodbye to Kiba and walked away. The brown-haired male stared after the blonde beauty before he looked at his friend to see him staring at the girl as well with wide eyes. Kiba stole another glance at the blonde female before a sly smile appeared on his face. You like her, he said as he turned to see a much redder face on the blonde than before, if it was possible. He couldn't help chuckling, but a sting from the corner of his mind made him pause shortly. His smile became a frown and everything just turned upside down. This is bad, he told himself to see Naruto's red face gone and a smile on his lips with dreamy eyes. Oh god, was this bad? Kiba slapped his forehead, realizing that this was going to be one heck of a year, if they got through it, that is. Everything is going to change, he only hoped it was for the better. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.